Welcome back to Walk with TFB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial who's eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on international education, global sport, and Black culture. We've had unfiltered conversation over the last 3 years now, but I think this episode is definitely going to top the list as it relates to what unfiltered really means, both in what is shared and how it is shared. This individual, as y'all see, y'all know who this person is, Dr. Jen Fry. Is someone who is always at the forefront, always at the forefront of conversation, forefront of change and movements. At this point, talking tech, travel, and conflict. Very excited to what we'll be discussing today. Without further ado, y'all help me welcome Dr. Jen Fry to the pod. What's up, Dr. Fry?
Oh, my friend, I am so excited to be on here. I have loved watching you grow this podcast. I have loved watching you just grow as a human. So I am super excited to be on here and chat with you.
I appreciate it, homie. We're gonna jump straight in, yo. Segment one. Like I said, I'm very excited to talk about what we discussed. What we said we were gonna talk about today. But segment one is all about storytelling. So again, people have seen and heard you talk in either clips and or in person over the last several years. But in your own words, what's your story?
I think it's a story of relationships, perseverance, and just figuring shit out on the fly. I mean, I really think that I have always told people that I've never had goals. Because when you have goals, it tends to keep you feeling like you have to stay in one path to reach your goal. It's like, well, I know I want to be a doctor. So since I want to be a doctor, I have to only do these things, not realizing that sometimes you take horizontal steps, vertical steps, of step back that will actually get you kind of leapfrog to where you want to be. And so I think for me, not having goals has put me in these places where I've never, like, if you would have told Jen Fry when she left college coaching that she would be a professional speaker and own two tech companies, I would be like, you are out of your mind. Like, this was never something that was on the horizon. If you told her that she would have coached for a national championship, she would have told you she lost her mind. And so I think for me, it's kind of been this thing of figuring it out on the fly and saying, I want to keep doing stuff I love, and knowing that as a human, the things I love will keep changing. And so many times people feel like they can only do one thing versus knowing that every phase of you is going to be different in some way. And that phase of you at a certain time might want different stuff. There was a phase of me that thought I'd be a college volleyball coach for 70 years. I would be the person that dies being a volleyball coach. And then at one point I said, I didn't want to do that. And I thought I wanted to work in a school setting. And then I was working in a school setting. And while I enjoyed it, I thought that there was something more that I could do. And so I went to be a professional speaker. And I was a professional speaker. And I always said that whenever you mention the word race in college athletics, it's going to be synonymous with Jen Fry Talk. And I've worked to have that type of influence. And then at some point I said, I want to talk more about conflict because we can't really talk about race issues unless we talk about conflict. And so I want to make my name conflict synonymous with Jen Fry Talk. And then I decided to start tech companies because I saw that there's a pain point and a need. And so it's just been this thing of trying to figure stuff out and being willing to take risks that sometimes people will be like, that is just a wild risk. And researching it, but also being able to take some risks to figure out what phase of Jen Fry, like what comes next for this new and different phase.
A great start. So when I think back to looking at Montevallo,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and Tiffin, what are one of those risks you took back in your undergraduate days that were like, yeah, that needed to happen, that had to happen?
I think it was moving from Arizona to Alabama.
Mm.
Like that, to go across the country. My mom is white, my dad's black, and my mom literally was, even though she didn't tell me until after I graduated, she was like, yo, I was scared. Because when you think of Alabama, you think of such bad stuff. That's all you think about, especially coming from Arizona. That's all we knew. And so she was scared about that. So taking that, and I've always been a person that moving or traveling hasn't been that big of an issue. I'll move in at the drop of a hat. And so my mom gave me that freedom to do that, to feel comfortable. And so going to school in Alabama was such a big risk from Arizona because people didn't do that where I was from. They went to San Diego, they went to Tucson, they went to Phoenix, but Alabama, no. And so I think that was a risk. And then I think the next risk was coaching volleyball. I don't like kids. Like I always tell my friends, I'm not going to babysit your kids until they're 9 years old or higher. I'm not doing the babies. I don't do that. That's not me. And so I didn't ever like kids. And then my former college coach was like, you want to coach a club team? You can get paid. And I was like, sure. And I fell in love with volleyball being this vehicle to help transform young lives. And so a risk I took was I didn't even know what this college coaching thing was about. And I just filled out applications and got a GA ship at Tiffin. And so it literally is like me just not having a clue and just doing stuff anyways. And hoping it works out. If it doesn't work out, there's always going to be a next move. Like I feel bad for people nowadays in millennials maybe or the younger ones who are afraid to take risks because they're afraid that they're not going to work out. And the reality of it is that some of the risks you take are not going to work out. It is what it is. You can think you know 100% of the information and you don't. And that's a huge blind spot. I was talking with someone and they were saying how their office went to this offsite leadership thing. And the CEO had said, we make decisions with 60% of the information. Because you're going to get 60%. You're not going to get 100. And if you think you have 100%, you're going to be devastatingly wrong. And so when people are like, well, if I move, what if it doesn't work out? That thing might not work out, but it might lead you to the right thing to work out. I was at Norfolk State. I got the call to go be an assistant at Washington State, the Pac-12. I moved in 5 days across the country. We got fired in 9 months. Baby, we were packing our shit up and going in 9 months. That move did not work out in any way, shape, or form. But you know what did work out is that move got me to Illinois and on the national championship stage. So that one move that doesn't work out is maybe putting you in position for the move that does work out. And so that's why I tell people, okay, it doesn't work out. You're going to still figure out what your next move is. And that one might be the one that actually does work out. And me getting fired from Washington State, our staff getting fired, was what was supposed to happen to put me on a national stage.
Yeah, that's wild. And shout out to Pullman, by the way. Pullman, I went to Pullman this past spring. Very interesting place.
Pullman, yes, it is.
Pullman,
yes,
I drove from Spokane to straight down Pullman. I'm like, there is nothing on this street.
Nope. But when football season, during football season, it's just flags, WSU flags. That's all you got. Yeah. Dang. But other than that, nothing.
There's nothing there. So take us to your doc experience. I remember meeting you in Baltimore. This is probably 2019. Either you were just about to finish, I believe, but what led you to even think about a PhD, especially given that you came from the coaching environment?
The story's always funny. So again, I don't have goals. Let me premise you. I didn't even know what a PhD was. My mom didn't graduate high school. I just fell into degrees. I literally just fell into degrees. I got my bachelor's and then I wanted to keep coaching. Someone's like, you can get a master's and coach. I didn't know what a master's was. They left. So I had my master's by the time I was 23. I didn't even know what that meant. So then I moved to North Carolina in 2012. And my friend, Dr. Ingrid Wicker-McCree, who is the AD at NCCU, she was getting the certificate in conflict and resolution, something like that, conflict and resolution. She was like, you would be a really good person. And this is like, now that we're talking about Tim, it's just wild. Because she was like, you would be a really good person to get this certificate. And it was like conflict and resolution studies. I don't even know why she said I would be a good person to get it. And so I was like, okay, but like, I am a good person with feedback that if you tell me, I'm going to go and look and start researching it. So I'm in this certificate program to like get it. And it's like, you can get a master's. I'm like, well, I'll just go to the master's. So I'm in the middle of the master's and like the classes just felt like they were the same thing and I wasn't enjoying it. And one of my schoolmates was like taking this class and I probably had like a semester and a half left to get this master's, the second master's. And my schoolmate was like, yeah, I'm taking this class and it sounded really cool. I'm like, word? And she was like, yeah, there's like a whole degree program on this. And I was like, word? So within the space of like 24 hours, I completely changed my whole master's program. And literally in like 2 days, I was like, I'm going to be in that master's. So I just changed my whole master's program, got into this new master's. It was taking these classes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I end up graduating and UNCG has this amazing program called Cultural Foundations. Phenomenal. And so I'm like looking through the course manual. I'm like, yo, these classes look amazing. So I've already graduated with my second master's. And I'm like, I'm just going to take these classes because they look amazing. So I take 4 classes under Cultural Foundations. It's all Black and brown professors, all of them. Like I have, and one of my classes, all Black students, like, and a Black professor. It was phenomenal. So I'm taking all these classes and then one of my best friends, Danielle, sees me enjoying it. And she was like, Jen, you can't get a third master's. Like you can't, you have to get a PhD at this point. And I was like, no. And she's like, no. She was like, talk to my mom And her mom graduated from Michigan State with her bachelor's and master's in geography. And she got her PhD in geography at UNC. And she was like, talk to my mom. Michigan State is creating this new program called Advancing Geography Through Diversity, where they're actively recruiting cohorts of Native, Black, and Latinx people. And she was like, talk to her, see if this would be a good fit. And I was like, geography? I'm like, I don't study rocks. Like, what are we talking about with that, fam? And so I talked to her mom, Dr. Webb, and she was just great. The information she gave, I'm like, okay, let me talk to the recruiter, because at this point they had a recruiter. And I am only studying Black female athletes. Like, I'm not fin to study anything else. So I came in, and I was very lucky in my experience. I said, this is who I'm studying. This is my questions. If you're not going to let me study, I'm not fin to do it. And so I talked to the recruiter, and I ended up talking to a faculty member. And the one thing is, faculty members, when they don't want you, they'll be like, no, period. And that's the email. And so I got that email, and I was like, okay, like, you don't got to tell me nothing. So then I ended up, I looked at like 5 different schools. And so maybe like a month later, all of a sudden I get like a 3-paragraph email from that same faculty member. We'd love to talk to you and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't really have any commitment, but okay, we can do that. And so then I ended up going in on a visit and had a really good time. But also, I'm going at 39 and I have my own money, so I can make more demands that other people can't. Like, one professor, I remember, he was like, oh, your GRE scores were low. Mind you, the GRE takes 4 hours to take. I took it 2 hours because I just did not care that much. Like, your girl was out there just like hitting stuff. I don't even know what I was doing. And he was like, well, your GRE schools are low and da-da-da. And I said, well, I guess I'm not going to come then. And he was like, oh, no. And that's where I was like, you're not holding this over me. I'm coming because I want to. And so I was like, okay, I got 4 other schools I'm looking at.
Yep.
And how quickly that changed.
Yep.
And so from that, I had a great visit with them. And the one thing is that, and I will always appreciate how much love Michigan State gave me. Like, my mom passed away during that time. I'm traveling 5 days a week to speak, and they really supported me. The grad director, Dr. Moore, Alan, the chair, they were like, what can we do to help you be great? It wasn't this like, you can't do this, you have to stay here. They were giving me assignments and research that fit in with who I was, not forcing me to stay in. And at one point, one faculty member was like, oh, you can't speak and do this and be in grad school. And I said, you ain't finna like my decision. So I'll put that check on the desk and walk away, my man. Like, you're not gonna like it because I don't need this PhD. I'm doing it. I don't even know why I'm doing this shit. But for me,
yeah.
Like, okay, it's not gonna help me be a professional speaker. And then when I went and told Dr. Moore, he was like, oh, no, we'll get this figured out. He was like, we're not gonna have that. And they supported the hell out of me. And I had a cohort. There was Angie, who's Native, and then 2 Black women, Kiana and Vita, who don't, like, that was my cohort, Black and brown folks. So we had a different feeling. And then we had a professor who was trying to act a fool. So we had to remove from our class because we're like, you ain't finna treat us like this. Oh, when I tell you, we were storming Norman's because she tried to change the syllabus because she didn't want the class to be virtual. It was spring 21. She didn't want the class to be virtual. She wanted it to be in person. And she was trying to tell us, well, if you don't want to take it, wait till 24 to take it. Baby, and Angie was like leading her tribal's company. Vita worked. We weren't messing around. So we were sending letters like, we aren't the ones. You go pick someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up getting the guy who ultimately ended up being my chair as our professor. And let me just say one thing. When people are going through their PhD program, they always look for the people who have the biggest, flashiest names. No, look for the person that's going to love the shit out of you. The person that when you're in town, they're going to make sure you're eating at their house. They're going to be sending you job descriptions, that they're going to be finding ways to make you successful, that they will go to bat for you with a friggin' Thor hammer. Like, that's what you need in this process. Too many folks want the big name who just doesn't have time for them. And rightly so. Like, they're pulled in every single direction like octopus. They ain't got time for the love and support that you need in a PhD program. So stop looking for the big name that you want on your committee, or maybe have that person on your committee just so that they sign off. But your chair, that chair you are building a relationship with. You have got to find someone that loves the shit out of you. And that's how I got a PhD.
That's my story too, Jen. Because as soon as I found that out, I think my second year, I took a random international education class. And I was like, what is this? And that's how I essentially fell into this work. But to that point about the advisor, I'm like, my dog, Dr. Woodman, that's my rollie, right hand for real. And without him, there's no way I would be in this point right now. So I feel that I'm gonna cut that one because more people need to hear that, especially Black people that want to get
Listen,
a PhD.
listen, Kyle is he if you know the John Candy, John Candy was a white comedian. Kyle reminds me very much of John Candy, very self-deprecating, but man, that man is a good ass human. If I called him right now and said I'm gonna be in town in 2 days, his wife is Turkish, he had me over for a full Turkish meal. Like that man does not play about me. And that's why I try and tell people like that PhD journey ain't no joke. You need to have a chair that is willing to go to war for you, so that you're
Mm-hmm.
not having to carry the weight all the time of having to fight those battles.
No lie, yo. Segment two, directly related to your doc. Let's talk more about sport geography. All right, what'd you study? What was your DISI on? Let's let that be the foundation before we jump into conference realignment.
Again, I tend to do stuff on people's offering of suggestions. And so I did my dissertation on the racial experiences of professional Black female volleyball players in Europe. Like I knew the group I was going to do it on. I did my PhD in 3 years because I knew the group. I had my questions. I had access. Like, why are we messing around? And what Kyle did that was great after I finished with my classes, he was like, you already know these people. Why don't you get IRB approval and let's get this rolling? Like, why are we going to wait? So I got IRB approval. I had my interviews transcribed and done before my oral comps, my written comps. And he was like, what are we finna be waiting? And so I had that done. So I go into my written comps, I go into my oral comps. When I defended my dissertation December 1st, I already had 80% of my PhD written. So when I defended March 30th, like he was like, we ain't got time to waste. And I know some people are like, well, they're putting the cart behind the horse or before the horse, but she already got this experience and the access, the things that people have the problem with. Why are we waiting? And that was why I appreciated about him. He was willing to push boundaries and back me up where other people are like, no, we have to do it this way. He was like, nah, let's get you out of here, girl. And so I did it on the racial experiences of professional Black female volleyball players in Europe. And he also had a background in his work was on the Ottoman Empire in Turkey and like poppies and drugs. Kyle got some wild stories. Let me tell you, Kyle got some wild stories. He's my man, but he will have some wild stories. And so I did it on that. And so, like I said, I take life-changing suggestions that people just throw at me. And the woman, Dr. Lisa Marie Pierre, she was helping me with my dissertation. She was like, man, you need to write a theoretical framework about this. And I was like, say less. No, she should have said less. She should have, because I got in the middle of creating a theoretical framework for Black female athletes. I know, what was I doing? So my dissertation was 403 pages long.
Jesus.
I created a theoretical framework. I created a language guide of how you're going to talk about people in my dissertation. How should we be talking about folks in dissertation? So I created those two things. And then, like when I graduated, I was very much adamant that my language guide had to be at the beginning. We're not putting it in the appendices. I need you to see my reasoning for using Black, for using woman, for using female. I need you to see that I have 3 definitions for trans. Like I need you to see all that and let it sit with you. And so the grad program was like, no, you got to put it in the appendices. And again, for me, I'm just not gonna publish it with y'all. I'll take this shit back and go ProQuest myself. Like I'm telling you how this dissertation is gonna look. Like, and if we need to go up the chain, you tell me whose desk I'm gonna be at. Because I'm not doing this thing that you want me done because you don't understand what this means. So I'm not even like, what do we need to do? And they finally were like, well, you can make it chapter 1. Okay. But it's going to be in the beginning of this dissertation. Just you tell me how, but I'm not budging on this. And that's the thing about having power where I'm like, I'll rip this whole damn thing up. Don't play with me. But I'm not worried about that because it was that important to me. And sometimes people be like, well, just graduate. No, this is the only dissertation I'm writing. So we're going to put it how I want it to be, not how you think it should be.
It's good stuff. Yeah, this is very therapeutic on a number of different levels, especially this doc experience. Because boy, it's like I'm about to take my credit elsewhere. I'm like, this ain't it. Because y'all doing the most. Like, why am I having to sit here and try to prove to y'all what I'm already doing?
Nope.
That makes no sense to me. And that's not like, yeah, fuck this. I'm taking a semester off because there's no way I would have stressed me the fuck out over some shit I'm already doing. That doesn't compute in my brain. It really
And
don't.
that's what they'll do. That's what they'll try and do. Like at one point, somebody was like, why are we doing, putting the cart before the horse? Because Jen has 15 years of experience in this area. Jen, every single person I interviewed, I know. I know Black female volleyball players in this area. I have access to Olympians. I have access. You want me to wait just because that's the way you're used to it? And just because you're used to it doesn't mean I have to follow those
I have to
rules.
follow it.
And
Come on.
no, newsflash, I'm a rule breaker. I'm not doing it that way because it's where you feel comfortable. And I had pushback on people. No, look, this PhD does. I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything to me because to be able to stunt on folks and have them call me doctor is chef's kiss, right? That is worth the weight of it. And you're not going to change this thing that I know better than you know. You're not, and that's like, and that's the biggest thing. Like Dr. Billy Hawkins, who's at Houston. If y'all are looking for a PhD program, holler at Dr. Hawkins. He was on my committee. Fabulous. Like he was great with it. And so I think that's the thing is that like when you're in these positions of doing these PhDs, they will try and force you to do something that you don't want to do. It's not in your wheelhouse because they're comfortable with it. To me, this PhD is about me. And I'm okay if people don't agree with that, but I'm the one who's sitting there writing a 403-page document. They're not.
Exactly. I'm glad you did it your way, because what you've done is not just create something new, but also contribute to what is happening as we pivot to conference realignment. So I remember seeing this shit as soon as you posted it on September 8th, and it's this graphic that says every D1 college, and damn near every college got to be on or to the east of the Mississippi. And I know your caption read, "This makes my sports geography heart sing. Anyone know why this is?" And I'm sitting there thinking like, I got some ideas, but I'm curious to hear one first. Like, why does it might be rhetorical, but why does it make your sport geography heart sing seeing a graphic such as this?
Because I think we don't understand how much geography and maps and sports all go hand in hand. Like they all go together. Sport is about geography. Rivals is about geography. Like you don't have Washington doesn't have a rival with like Florida, right? Rivalries are about geography. It's about close proximity to people. It's about fan bases being in close proximity. It's about your neighbors, your families, all being in close proximity to each other about this one thing and being able to like grapple with each other about it. There's a great 30 for 30. If you really want to see sports geography without realizing it's sports geography, watch the 30 for 30 on the Raiders. That is sports geography in a nutshell because it talks about fan bases and how the Raider fan base, when they were in LA, was Black, was brown, was Hispanic, was gangster, was Snoop Dogg, right? Like it was fitted hats and starter jackets. Like it was, everyone wanted to be a Raiders fan. You saw Raiders starter jackets in all of, Snoop's videos, Dre's, NWA. Like it was Black and brown. And then it goes to Oakland, and then the whole ethos of the fans disappears because of the move 5, 6, 7 miles. And then now the move to Vegas. Your fan base has changed with where the location of those stadiums are. And so we don't realize that everything about sport is beautifully geography. When we look at conferences, the Pac-12 is Pacific. It's all Pac-12 schools have an ethos to them that is very different than a Midwestern school. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like as an actual conference. And is there going to be some butting heads culturally? And there's such a different ethos to them. The SEC, Southern, is a very different ethos. The ACC Atlantic is a very different ethos. And I think that many times we don't see it as geography. The fan bases are, they bleed the ethos of where they're at. If you look at Alabama fan base, they are very different than a Washington State, a Oregon fan base. Very different. A Florida fan base is similar to an Alabama or Auburn fan base, but it's very different from an Arizona State fan base. So that's what I mean by geography. There's an ethos, a culture that comes with these teams and these conferences that for me is hugely disappointing because you're seeing it die out. There is nothing like conference rivalries. There is nothing like it. And if you're not in sport, you just don't understand the pure hatred that comes with that team. It could be your mom, your dad, your grandpa, but there's a hatred. I mean, there was one video, I'll never forget, it was like a couple on a date and they started talking football. And the guy maybe was like Ohio State, and the girl like looks at him, or no, he said he was Michigan, I think. And the girl like looks at him, opens the door, is like, "Go Bucks," and then dives out of the car. Like, that shit is real. And that's what I think is sad, is that rivalry that you live and die by is really going to be gone with this different conference realignment.
This is good. So you're speaking the rivalries, of course, and obviously the geography and the relationship that schools have with their respective areas. What I'm also thinking about is from an academic perspective,
Oh,
right? And so again, Big Ten, strong academic, strong sports, right? Highly ranked, whatever, for whatever the hell that means, public schools. And so I'm thinking, and really curious to hear more of your thoughts about, like, how do you envision, or what do you think is going to happen from an academic standpoint? What having West Coast schools being the ACC and fucking USC being a bit like that? We know it don't make sense, right? Just from pure, just common sense. But like from an academic standpoint, how do you foresee that also impacting these schools that are in these conferences?
I don't know how these students are going to do it. I really don't. Because so I did some research, and the furthest a Pac 12 school had to go flying wise was 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Now they're going to be having to go 6 hours, and we're just talking flight time.
Mm-hmm.
6 hours is the furthest. And we're not talking charter time, because I leave the charters out of it. They're leaving that night. They're home by 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking about all the other teams that are going to have to fly commercial, have layovers, and they are literally taking a full day to get across. I just don't know how to do that. There are schools in the Pac-12 that 90% of their classes are in person. How can they do that? Because I can't remember which conference. Some of them play like Thursday, Saturday, some play Friday, Sunday. So say if we even take if it's the Big Ten playing Thursday, Saturday, yeah, then what they would probably have to do is they're leaving Tuesday, because Tuesday's a full travel day. Wednesday is a practice, get your feet under you, get your bearings. Then you play Thursday, you fly or do whatever to the next on Saturday, or excuse me, on Friday, and you play Sunday. Now you spend all day. No, yeah, you play Friday. You travel Friday. You play Saturday. The all day Sunday is a travel day. Then Monday you're in school, but if you have another away weekend, well then Tuesday you're back on the road. So how are they going to be in class? What is that academic load going to look like for them, especially when they're in class? So I'm very worried about that, and I worry about the weight it's putting on these academic advisors, that they're going to be having to travel with them and leading their families, and they didn't sign up for that. So because now we need more academic support on the road, more test prep, more all of that, or test proctoring. So I worry about, right now, people are already burnt out of college athletics, not wanting to get into jobs. What does this look like more when these conferences are just like, I don't know how Stanford and Cal are going to do it. I really don't, because you at least with the Big Ten, you can do it in half, right? You have the East Side, the West Side, and maybe they'll switch some, but for the most part, they can stay on their sides. I don't know how Cal and Stanford are going to do it when every single away game has to cross the U.S., literally to the coast to coast. How are they going to manage their academics with that? I have a huge concern.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, the more you think about it, at least the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, who was in the room, who wasn't in the room, who didn't speak up, what information wasn't, like, because there's no way, just simply from a money standpoint, that everyone looked around and said, yeah, we're going to figure this out. Right? And I think to your point, even with your research, is like, y'all clearly have not worked in the athletic department, not post 2020, not directly with these athletes, I'll say that right now, because there's no way that this is even like feasible. Like, I don't get it.
Well, and I think also talking about the 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 athlete experience, what does it look like? That, because before, again, when you're in that region, your parents can go to more games. If I'm an athlete at Cal, my parents can go to, because it's 2.5 hours. It's way easier. What does this look like for parents and the amount of money they're gonna have to fly across the country every weekend to watch their kid? Because before, if say my child plays at Cal, well, I can fly up to Washington, watch them, and fly out the next morning and still go work. I can do those major hubs with no problem. What does it mean now to go watch my kid play at Clemson, where Clemson's 2.5 hours right from the nearest airport, from Atlanta, or I can't think of the other one. So now I can't just go up, right? I can leave work at 3 o'clock, catch a quick flight up to Washington or Arizona, hour and a half. I can be there by the 7 o'clock start time. Watch that one. I could even fly back home the next day, and I've only missed a day of work. Where now I'm flying across the country. I have to have 2 fly days. Then I have to get there, rent a car. Like, it just makes, I feel like, that family experience a lot different. Yeah, it opens up the recruiting lanes, but for those athletes who are from the coast, from that area, what does it mean for their family experience of the family can't just easily on a cheap flight go visit you? It's got to be one parent or the other because they're flying across the country, and there's so much more expenses incurred.
It's a good point. It's a really good point, especially with the recruitment piece, because the one thing that just came to mind is that graphic was focused on Division 1. And so
Yeah.
even I'm thinking about, okay, like, do we see something to watch? D2 enrollment, D3 enrollment over the next several years, especially from a
Mm.
geographic standpoint, or even thinking about athletes that may have wanted to go play in the Pac-12, but because, ACC, even Big Ten has some games over there, do they stay on the East Coast or just come to the East Coast? Like, I'm thinking even from
Yeah.
that perspective, like mobility and migration to the East and Southeast too could be very interesting to watch.
No, I think that's a really good point of, or do I go to a mid-level D1 that doesn't have that same type of migration?
Hmm.
Like, what does that look like? I think also it leaves out if there are some athletes that are kind of like caretakers at home in some way.
That's good.
Excuse me, and have siblings that they have to worry about, or elderly parents. I mean, because about one thing that COVID showed us is how much of these athletes are caretakers.
Yeah.
And so now, what does it look like that before they could caretake in some way? Now they are gone. There is no way. And so I just think of all those idiosyncrasies that people didn't really think about. And I just, you know, we talk a lot about athlete mental health. We talk about coach mental health. I just I don't know how this is going to help that situation where coaches were already stressed about leaving their families, and now the length is going to be a lot more on a consistent basis. I think for the Big Ten, it's going to be easy, right? They can hop over to Cali, woohoo, have a little
Mm-hmm.
fun, and then come back. But those California teams are the ones I really am very worried about.
Mm. Yeah, something to pay attention to. And I'm not gonna move to segment 3 without first asking you because I forgot your DISI, your research. What'd you find? What'd you confirm? What'd you learn?
It was fascinating. So I did, like I said, the racial experience of professional Black female volleyball players in Europe. And with my dissertation, it was like my love letter to Black female volleyball players of, hey, I want you to understand your experience if you're going to go play abroad. Because I feel like there is a sexiness people put on professional athletes abroad. Not understanding that's just hard, right? You know it from the reverse of athletes coming to the U.S., but like it's a hard life, and people don't realize that. And I hate that there have been some great athletes that have not stayed because they've had such a bad experience. And so I think some of the things that I learned was it's very critical that you have an agent that understands you and all of your identities to help you navigate through it, and to be able to have those honest conversations of, hey, look, you're going to be playing in Poland. This is the culture and the atmosphere. Are you okay with it? Like, let's have that real conversation. And I know you want to make money and play, but let's have that conversation, and having those real honest conversations. I think people are so afraid to have those honest conversations that they don't realize that people would rather respect you for having them than you knew and you blindsided me. So I think the first thing is how critical agents are in the success of the athlete, of knowing the things to ask for, of helping them out. Simple things of like in the contract having not just a car and an apartment, but making sure that like you got a toaster, you got a blender, that when you fly across the country, that they have linens and towels there for you. Because there have been athletes who have flown across the country, getting there late, and they have nothing. So like those small things I think are really critical. I think the experiences I had, one woman who said she played on this team and no one ever talked to her. And her last day, when they took her out to dinner or lunch, everyone started speaking English, and she realized that they just didn't want to speak English around her. So they didn't ever talk to her until that moment, and she was like, and she'd been almost outcast in some way. One woman talked about how, like, maybe in Poland, like someone, or Romania, like someone threw sticks at her. She's had, one woman spoke about that she was at like a little market or bodega, and this kid is like poking her, trying to get her attention. She finally turns, the kid's like 10 or 11. She turns and the kid spits in her face. And she was like, let me tell you, I chased that kid down and shook the shit out of him in front of that cop. Right? Like experiences of that magnitude. Like I just want them to know what's it going to be like if you go Eastern Bloc Europe? What does it look like if you go Spain? And like to understand what those experiences could potentially be like, big city, small city. What things you can ask for that will make your experience be better. What type of teammates, just like all those questions that you can both be on the same team and have drastically different experiences. And that's okay and valid. Because sometimes you hear well, I was on that team, I never had that experience. Well, you're a different human. And we got to stop like doing that comparison of experiences to invalidate someone's experience.
Yeah, you got me thinking about this athlete development curriculum, right? We always focus on U.S. based leagues, but what is the preparation? Could there be preparation for athletes that want to play in non-U.S. countries, and what does that look like how do we equip athlete development professionals to facilitate programming to ensure that their transition is one that which they thrive and not just survive?
I think that's a great question, and I think it is having athletes realize that they have more control than they think they do.
That part.
Like you have more, you need to ask for more stuff. I know that, people try and compare U.S. professional sports to international, and you can't. It's apples and oranges. For U.S. professional sports have boards and CEOs and presidents. International, some billionaire will be like, bro, I just want to start a volleyball team, and they'll start it, and then they'll go broke and be like, we're done.
Yeah.
And then all these athletes ain't getting paid. Like it's so different. And that's what people don't realize is the difference of it. Not bad, it's just different. Like these billionaires just be like, yo, I just want to start a soccer team, so I think it's cool.
Yep.
And that's all. When Brittany Griner was over in Europe, I know maybe it was Sue Bird was talking about one of the Russian, was it Ogul? What did you say, oligarchies? I can't think of what you call like a billionaire in Russia, but how they would that billionaire would be like, yo, y'all want to go shopping? Okay, bet, here's the credit card, and just give them a credit card. Yeah, she was talking about like what they would do. It's a different life over there, and people just need to understand that.
Well, segment 3, support, right? So you talked about your DC research, didn't dive deep into your tech companies, but would love to hear more about that as well. But how can our podcast community best support you, your work, your purpose journey?
Yeah, let me tell you, I started it's called Coordle. It's a group movement platform. And when I started that, I could have told you I was about to go to the moon. I had no clue what I was getting. Again, I didn't been doing shit. I had no clue. And so I saw this pain point after my graduation that I was like, there needs to be something that fixes group travel. I didn't know what I was getting into. So I was like, let me just do an app. Like, I say like, oh, someone has a broken bone, let me just do surgery on them. I don't know what I'm doing, but I just wanted to do it. And so I got into it, and it's probably been one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever been in. Supremely uncomfortable, because you don't know what you don't know, but you have an idea that there's a lot you don't know. Yep. And so for me, it's been this growth. And like I said, when people make suggestions, I'm like, let me just try it out. And so my company was business to consumer, meaning if you and your friends wanted to go on a trip, you use my platform, and business to consumer. But then slowly it also came out that many people, like, I won't even pay for avocado. I'm not paying for an app. Right? Like I go to Chipotle, I'm like, what? Guacamole's $2.99 pass. So how could I get individuals to pay for an app. But somebody said, hey, you should look at business to business, because business to business is where the scalable money's at, the contract. And I was like, word? Let me do some research. Oh, like I try and tell people, when you start companies, you need to do research. If you are starting and you haven't done at least 60 hours of interviewing people with questions, you don't know really if your company is going to work.
Good.
I see so many people who are like, oh, I started this because my friend liked it. I'm like, well, how much actual research have you done? Well, just casual conversation. So you haven't done research. Like, you need to have a script. You need to have where you are recording that. And I did over 100 hours of across industries. And that's when I realized that B2B is where it's at, that across industries, people don't move groups well. It's usually text message, group chat, spreadsheets. Nothing is a way of, here is a simple way in a platform that we could do it with ease and everyone's in real time. Because our thought is, if your life is in real time, your group movement should be in real time. And so we went B2B. And so what we've essentially been doing is, when you go B2B, it means that you can't download this on the App Store. You have to have a host that puts in their credit card information, that pays for the subscription to be able to use the platform. And so for me, that was a huge risk, because B2C feels easier, right? I can tell you to just go download it, but I can't get you to pay, right? Like, it feels easier. B2C feels like, and for me, it's a stress point. Like, I talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, download, oh problem. There's no problem. And so for me, going B2B was a big stressor, because you have to work a different kind of crowd and clientele. And I think this is definitely the way to go. It's just hard. And when you are starting businesses and figuring out and pivoting, it's hard, and that's okay. And so I would say, folks, if you're interested, one thing that we've realized that our platform can be used really well for is group movement for team travel, but also for recruit visits. So think about, Tim, whenever there'd be a recruit visit at the schools you were at, they send you a Word doc, and then it'll just be a bunch of text messages. Okay, they're not on time. Okay, this or that. Our platform, literally, you input the recruit's visit, and then in real time, you can move stuff up or down. You can change times. So instead of them meeting with you at 10, if they need to meet with you at 11, you just drag and drop it, and now it's real time on the itinerary, and everyone gets a push notification.
Wow. So you're selling the schools?
Yep, schools, teams, and saying like, this is going to solve your pain point for recruiting visits. Wow. So everyone's consistently on the same page. You don't even have to do it. If you want to send a Word itinerary, you can, but you don't even have to do that. They just download the app and the itinerary pops in. It's actually a pretty cool thing. And so that's one thing that we've been working on, is this idea of, how do we make it just a lot easier? And so, I mean, you all are a podcast, but I'm kind of showing Tim, like, this is what it would look like. Like, you put everyone's itinerary.
Yeah, literally drag and drop.
Yep, wow. Drag and drop everything. And then there's also room for notes to put in links, to put notes about, more detailed notes about who you're meeting with, information. You can even link the profiles of each person you're meeting with. And you can put more detailed information, because you're not sending them a 30-page Word document.
Yeah.
That changes in the drop of a dime.
So what you need? AD meetings?
AD meetings, director of ops meetings. Now our price point is $99 a month, which we feel is super reasonable. So you can use this platform for $600 for a season or semester, or $1,200 for the year. We're trying to keep it really reasonable so that all schools can use it, not just the big ones. So anyone who does any stuff with recruit itineraries and wants a simpler way, we'd love to chat with you. That is kind of a big thing that we're looking at. So that's Coordle. And then the third company, which I started with my co-founder, my chief of staff, is called Hyreable. And it's a career development company that is meant to scale the careers of Black and brown professionals in the world of sports. So we have a database, which anyone that's Black or brown listening, please go add your information. It's Hyreable, Hyreable. Yep. So anyone, we have a database. We also have resume prep and interview prep. So if you're looking for those services, we also have them. I've done like almost 10 years of helping with interviews and resumes. And so that one is, we're trying to have 5,000 Black or brown professionals in the database, so that you can't say you don't know where X or Y is. That literally these people are here, and a wide variety of depth and width. So saying like, from sport management programs all the way up to presidents, and always also the variety of titles. So all ways we want to have shown in this database. We're excited that we have a few partnerships coming out. And like I said, our goal is to have 5,000 Black and Brown professionals. And we would love for you to add your information and also spread it around so we can reach 5,000, because I know that there are some competitors out there, but we are 100% candidate centric. We're not a search firm. We're not a recruiting service. We are saying, how can we make excellent Black or Brown candidates?
Love it. And I'll include both of those links to in the description of this podcast as well, so people can download and add their information. Dr. Fry, I got one last question for you. You've been, how many schools you been to so far? Schools or campuses? If you had to
Oh my
guess.
God. I don't even know. I maybe like over 200. I don't, that's so hard.
Give us, we'll take 200 plus. Give us, I don't
Yeah.
know, 2 or 3 campuses, not experiences, but just campuses that stand out.
I would say Oxy College in Pasadena, California. There's D3. These, woo, those, those athletes were ready. They were phenomenal to work with. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I
Wow.
enjoyed what they brought to the table, the in-depth conversation. Oh yeah, Oxy was great. Oh my gosh, let me see who else. It's hard because I've been to so many places all over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, mm, what would be another one? Oh gosh, I can't think off the top of my head
Do
because
you do
all of them
anything?
did.
Oh, go
Hmm?
ahead.
Well, I mean, I think also the thing is that I've had such phenomenal conversations with also coaches and staff
Yeah.
that who want to learn, who want to be engaged. I also think like Williams College, a D3 school, they were really, I mean, great, had phenomenal questions. Um, yeah, those are the top two I can say right now. Where I'm like, those were ones where I was like, oh man, that was a great experience. Or also Bowdoin College, Bowdoin,
Oh.
they were all about it. They were like, what do we need to do to talk about this, to think about this in a very nuanced way? They
Hmm.
were really good as well.
Do you have like a ritual in these towns, like coffee shop, brewery, lunch spot?
Um, it's no, because it changes like when I go, but I think the biggest thing I always try and do is get a workout in.
Yeah.
I always want to make sure that the place I stay has workout facilities because I have
Yeah.
to get my body moving.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get into a position of just like sleeping in all the time. So I really try and get my body moving, but I also try and see if I know anyone around that I can grab for
Yeah.
coffee or for
Yeah.
dinner. I
Yeah.
think that's probably the coolest thing about my experience is that I get to um, see a lot of friends and family that it takes me just into awesome spaces, and I
Yeah.
get to see them, and maybe I haven't seen them in a while. So that's probably one of my favorite things.
That's love. Dr. Jen Fry, I appreciate you, yo. Very much enjoyed this conversation. It's been good.
The future Dr. Tim Bryson, I appreciate you having me on here.
Hey, tell your people in Michigan State, my credits, I'm seeing my credits transfer over. Shit, I'm trying to get out of here. Fuck this.
I think you'd be great with internalization and geography. I think that
Man,
could be a phenomenal part.
anything to get out. But like I said, thank you for your time. Cannot wait to drop this episode next week. But for everyone else, man, thank y'all for tuning into another episode of Walk with TFB. I know for sure y'all have learned and have taken away at least something from this conversation, whether that's sport geography, Black women's experiences, playing professional volleyball in non-U.S. countries. But then, of course, this internationalization piece that we'll continue to see. I look forward to having more unfiltered conversation with authentic people in future weeks. But as always, until then, walk with me.